All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for today's ANA webinar, Using Social Media in Your Project. Today is June 5th, 2014, and we will be starting this webinar now. So thank you for joining us. This webinar is being presented by the Pacific Region Training and Technical Assistance Center, a resource of the Administration for Native Americans. You can visit our website at www.anapacificbasin.org, and our office helps all of the eligible communities in the Pacific region to develop projects and to apply for ANA grants. So if you are in the Pacific or know of anyone, then please give us a call, contact us, and our services are all free, made possible by ANA. A little about ANA, who is putting on this webinar for you and for the rest of the nation. ANA promotes self-sufficiency for Native Americans by providing discretionary grant funding for community-based projects and training and technical assistance to eligible tribes and Native organizations. And ANA's vision is for all Native communities to be thriving. And so they will work relentlessly to help Native peoples across the U.S. and in the Pacific until that vision is fully realized. And you can visit their website at www.acf.hhs.gov/programs/ANA. Now, today's webinar is part of our weekly ANA webinar series. Every Thursday we have a national ANA webinar for you to sign up for and join whenever you can. And these will always be free. And for the most part, the various four regional offices cycle between hosting these webinars. And so this week is being hosted by the Pacific. On June 12th, we actually have two webinars, and you can choose the one that you'd like to join. We have the Two-Spirit LGBT Projects in Native Communities webinar, and we also have the How to Apply for a NABI Grant webinar. This is the Native Assets Building Initiative grant, which is currently open for applications. The rest of the ANA grants for this funding cycle have already been closed, and panel review has happened, but we still have the NABI grants available. And so if you are an organization who is a CDFI or helps your communities with financial stuff, or credit counseling, stuff like that, this might be a good grant for you. And on June 26th, we'll have a webinar on finding census information on your community, which is really great for writing grants and reports and stuff like that. So if you want to sign up for any of these webinars, visit the events page of the ANA website, and you should find links to register to each of these and more. And you'll also find recordings of past webinars in the resources section of the ANA website. And then that will include this webinar, which you're in right now. So I might be going kind of fast with the webinar, just because we have a lot to cover. But just remember that, if you miss anything, you can always email me directly, or you could just go to the ANA website next week, at the end of next week, and it'll probably be there for you to watch again. Okay, so let's get into it. For today's webinar, we have two main goals. The first is to provide you with an overview of popular social networks and best practices for leveraging the unique strengths of each. And so I'm going to be going over kind of like 6 popular social networks. And instead of explaining what each is, I'm just going to kind of briefly explain the primary function of each and spend most of my time focusing on actual best practices or tips and tricks that you can actually use while you're implementing a campaign via any one of these networks. So if you want to get, that just like basic information, like what is Facebook, what is Twitter, you could probably Google that after the webinar. But for the most part, I'll be focusing on more practical skills and things that you can use within each of these. And then the second goal is to guide you to creating your own social media strategic plan. And so in the second half, I'll be going over, the ways that you can create your own portfolio of social media networks that's right for you, and to create some kind of outreach plan that's actionable and a work plan that you can use to carry these things out for however long you can. All right, so the first question you might have is, what is social media? And some of you might have seen this cat playing the piano, and you've heard of things going viral. So this is a video that went viral, took up millions of views. But social media for our organizations, for our nonprofits and our projects, can be a lot more than this, right? So social media is really a way for us to engage our audiences directly and where they're at. And so we have multiple communities that we work with on a regular basis, and those communities can be like the people who we serve through our project. And some of us have multiple projects going on which serve different but overlapping communities. We have communities of people based on interests. We have communities of people based on geography. We have professional partner communities. We have communities of friends and organizations doing similar things. And so we have all these different types of communities that we want to stay engaged with, and social media is a way to do that. And one way that you could look at it is like each platform is maybe like a dinner party or something, right? So you're having a party at a house, and you have a bunch of people who you know at this party. So maybe, one party might be like mostly friends from work or something, and another party might be like a bunch of your high school friends and you're having a little reunion thing, and another party might be like all of your family. But at these parties, sometimes you'll see like some people who are at all of the parties, some people who are like work and family, friends, or there's a lot of overlap. And so sometimes the communities overlap, but really what you want to do is be a good host of your party, right? So be a good dinner party host. Make sure that everyone's being attended to, that no one's being left out, and everyone's voice is heard, and everyone will have fun, right? So the thing, if you think about it as a party, what you don't want to be is that guy at the party who's like overly aggressive networking. So, it's just like a regular dinner party, but there's some guy who's like handing out his business card to everyone. He kind of like steers every conversation to have something to do with what he's selling or what he's doing for his work, and he just can't switch out of work mode. And so that kind of guy can really like bring a party down sometimes. And so, if you think about it that way, like, you don't want to be that guy. And so, constantly posting things that only promote what you're doing, or only posting advertisements, or only asking people for things, that will kind of turn you into that guy at the party. So what you want to do is make sure that you're delivering content, right? That you're delivering interesting content that people want to hear and people will talk about, right? So you want to like, walk into that group of quiet people in the party and bring up some topic that everyone is interested in, and so that when you walk away from that group and go into another group, then they're still talking about what you brought up. So, kind of spur those conversations. And the thing that you can learn from the Piano Cat is to have fun. So there's a reason why these kind of things go viral, and it's because people don't really want to be dragged down, right? They want to be inspired. They want to be they want to laugh, they want to have fun, they want to see cute puppies and cats. And I'm not saying that you got to put cats in there, but it could help. But the main thing is just to like, not take yourself too seriously, and yeah, try not to just like try to be positive when you can. So realize that social media strategy should be unique to your needs. And so there are hundreds, if not thousands, of networks out there for you to leverage. And so you shouldn't just kind of have a monkey see, monkey do approach, right? You need to kind of find out first where your community is most active, and then go to where you can get the best quality results from your outreach. And so outreach is going to take time. It's going to take discipline to keep on keeping up with these communities. But if you are targeting it right, and if you are engaging at a real level, then it can be really worth it. And your social media outreach plan should definitely be unique to your organization's needs, and we'll kind of get into that later in the presentation. But just realize that social media can be a way for you to nurture and grow communities. And so, you know, you're with your communities at events, and then you have like email listservs to blast things out to them. And, you know, sometimes you have like people coming in and out of your offices or your headquarters, and you're delivering your services. But social media is a way where you can like facilitate and grow communities in a real way, whether that's through customer service type of interactions, or more like you know, a cafe of ideas type of thing, philosophical discussions, or real-time debates about ongoing legislation or anything like that. Like, you can have some real substantial input through your social medias. So with that in mind, let's move on to the actual platforms. And so, like I said earlier, I'm going to kind of just briefly go over the purpose of each and spend more time talking about, you know, practical tips and tricks that you can use right away if you choose. But also keep in mind that not any one specific platform is best, and not any one specific platform is worst. It's all just based on what you need and what you feel will communicate best with the types of clients or customers or communities that you're reaching out to, and how it resonates with your brand and how much you're willing to put in terms of time, work, and attention. So with that, let's get into the first platform. So what we want to start with is your own website, right? And so a lot of people think that, you know, social media can be a replacement for a website. So, you know, some people say, like, I don't need a website because I have a Facebook page, or I don't need a website because I have a Google Plus account or something like that. But the reason why you need a website is because you want a place to archive all of the content that you'll be sharing. And the best way to do that is through a blog. And so if any of you are already on social media, you'll know that, like, especially on Facebook, you'll see that people are always like sharing these articles, and sometimes they're like BuzzFeed articles, or sometimes they're like Mashable or New York Times, or you know, just different types of blog information. And sharing these types of stories is really like what you want people to do. And the best stories that you want them to share are the ones that are coming out of your website, and preferably something that you've written, which also proves your expertise. So because of this method of sharing via social media, there's actually been this huge trend of websites putting, you know, big websites that are actually big companies, but content-focused websites, kind of de-emphasizing their homepage. And the reason is because most of these articles nowadays are shared through social media. So instead of people like logging into going to the homepage of a website and like looking at all the new blogs new stories that were posted today, and then clicking on the ones that they're interested in, it doesn't really work that way anymore. More likely, it's going to be like, one of your articles gets picked up by, that core group of readers, or maybe you share it through your Facebook page or your Twitter page or whatever, and then people read it, and if it's interesting, they'll start sharing it with other people, and everyone will only access that story by clicking on the thing that is shared. And so that whole action and that whole method of discovery completely bypasses your homepage, and it goes straight to the content. And so on your website, with that in mind, you'll want to install a blog, which is, if you have a web designer or something, it would be really easy for them to design a blog. And you can make that easier by using a website content management system with integrated blogging, like Google Sites or WordPress is probably the best one, although you might need a little bit of help from like a web savvy kid or something. But with that in mind, you want to have your website designed so that on any given blog page, there are also some buttons that people can click on, which will lead them to other places in your site where you want them to go. For example, like you might want them to sign up for an event, or you might want them to, apply for one of your products or services that your organization carries, or you want them to sign up for your email listserv or something like that. But those call to action buttons should be maybe like alongside a sidebar on your blog or something like that, just because homepage is less and less relevant as stories are more and more shared via social media. And so you want to blog regularly. We'll get into this a little more in the strategic plans portion, but you want to blog on topics that convey your brand or your expertise, right? And so a really popular type of story, and it's really easy and digestible, especially through social media, is like a top 5 something, like, top 5 ways to engage your community, or like, like the top 10 problems that only a tribal resident understands, and then have like a bunch of funny things or whatever. And so these kind of lists make it like really easy to digest. And psychology studies of social media show that people are a lot more likely to click on things like how to list 10 things list, things like that. But it's also cool to share inspirational stories, industry news, tips from individual bloggers, from individual staff members on your staff. So you might want to like cycle between bloggers. But blogging also keeps your website content fresh, and in terms of like your search engine optimization or SEO, the more that you add new original content to your website, the better it will affect your Google status, right? So like Google tries to prioritize websites based on how much that website is contributing to the overall amount of original content on the internet. So if you're just reposting information, like that's good, but if you're adding original, unique content to your website, that's like the highest rated factor in Google's formula for prioritizing websites in Google searches. So an easy way to do that is by blogging regularly. And you'll also be having different types of topics, which will broaden the search results for your organization. So Facebook, which we're probably all familiar with, is primarily used for personal life, and it's at this point it's really popular at all ages. So it's probably the most like widely used, widely accessible platform, and chances are you have one. Statistically speaking, 40% of Americans log into their Facebook account at least once a day. So that's a pretty crazy stat if you think about it. 40% of all Americans of all ages log into their Facebook account at least once every single day. So, pretty much any community that you have is likely to have at least some people on Facebook. And so the next thing I want to talk about is business pages versus personal profiles. So Facebook has 2 types of accounts that you can set up, right? One is a page with like a capital P, and that's their their format for businesses, organizations, tribes, any type of like collective group that wants to have like a public presence. And then the other type is the personal profile, which is meant for individuals, right? And so conventional wisdom says that you should have a business page for your organization, and I would still recommend that everyone has a business page for your organization. Business pages come with certain perks, like if you look on the screen at the top there, business pages come with the ability to look at data, how your page is behaving, and that's called insights in Facebook. So you get to see all kinds of cool stats, like how many, first of all, how many users you have, how many people like your page, how many of your posts are being read by people, how engaged people are, how likely they are to click on something, which geographic region they're in. There's all kinds of ways that you can filter your users through the business page. But the thing that you can't do in a business page is reach out to individuals directly. So like, if you meet some people at an event, you can't use your business page to go find their profile and request to be friends. But you can do that through a personal profile. So if your organization kind of is more centered around one individual person, or maybe if like it's more about like one-on-one types of relationships, you might want to consider using a personal profile for your business. But you will miss out on certain features in the business page, including the insights, but also like, the business page doesn't have any limit for the number of friends you can have, whereas personal profiles will max out at, I think, 5,000. And then business pages also allow you to pay for ads to promote your page, which you might want to do sometimes, but it can get pretty expensive, costing up to like 70 cents per like or per view. And that's kind of right up there with advertising rates you'd expect for like really high-end, ultra-focused types of, big media. But the good thing about the advertisements is that you can kind of focus them on specific, like really, really specific demographics. But in the long run, you want to earn the likes that you get on your posts, right? So when you post something, people can click like to indicate that they like that status or post. So you want to earn that by giving them content that's valuable and has quality, rather than just like, blasting it at them and flooding their news feed, trying to, get it that way, because people will just get irritated with you, and you'll be like that overly aggressive networking guy at the party who can't turn off work mode. So don't be like that. And what you want to do is monitor and learn from conversations that your community is having online. And so a lot of times, like these conversations will be had in like the comments section of a post that you make. So for example, like, you might be posting, so say that I had an organization that deals with native fishing rights or something, right? And in the state right now, there's like a debate going on about community-based fishing rules, and there was like some ongoing legislation. So I might post an update to my Facebook account saying like, yesterday a bunch of people gave testimony, and here's a news story, talking about or recapping that testimony day. And then I'll close that post with a question, right? What do you guys think about this? Something like that. And then you just wait for people to start commenting on it. And at first it'll be slow, but if you keep on doing this, you'll see that people start to engage. And just watch what they're saying. And a lot of times, like, you can even join back into the conversation and facilitate it or answer questions, stuff like that. But just seeing how your community talks about issues and debates issues can be a huge factor in not only your understanding of what they think, but also the the way that you make decisions within your own organization, right? That you can know that it's reflective of various viewpoints. So Facebook is the usually the most popular platform. And the other thing to know about Facebook is that, before we move on to this, is that like it started off with like college kids. You needed a college email address to get a Facebook account. But today, actually, like most of like the younger generations, we're talking like high school to like lower college, like undergrad kind of thing, so like middle school to sophomore in college, that whole demographic is kind of moving away from Facebook, but they do still have Facebook accounts. I think they're just trying to get away from their parents who are now on Facebook. They don't want them to see all their pictures. So the next platform I want to talk about is Twitter. And sometimes Twitter is difficult for organizations and businesses to grasp. So, as you know, Twitter requires that your updates are less than 150 characters, and it's really focused more on breaking news, real-time events, really short time frame things. Like a Twitter post that you put out there is really only going to be seen or heard for half a day, maybe, maybe a full day, depending on how much you post, but you can't expect it to be relevant for more than a day. But Twitter is really great for real-time events and processes. So, if going back to like that testimony legislative process that I was talking about earlier, if you were there at like a day of testimony and and people were like giving testimony on a bill related to something that you did, you could like post updates from the legislature room and like have real-time updates so that people who are following you, who are concerned about these issues, can go to you as the source. And I work as a journalist, outside of the Pacific TA Center, and these types of updates are like gold, because as soon as someone, as soon as something happens, like 5 seconds later, someone could tweet it, and 2 seconds after that, I could be reading it. So I could be reading things that are like as fresh as humanly possible, almost as if I was there and I was zoning out and then caught the news. So yeah, it's really good for that kind of stuff. So also like, schedule changes, real-time coordination, news. If you wanted to do like, quick polls of groups, you could do that. Another thing you might have seen is like hashtags, right? So it's like you have that $ and then a bunch of words after that. And a lot of people, like when they use them in their statuses, they kind of just use it as like a style thing, like it's just like a fun thing to do. But in reality, there's like a lot of functionality that comes with hashtags. And so hashtags are really a way to tag the information that you're putting out there, or the tweet that you're putting out there, right? So if you're actually on Twitter and you see a tweet and it has a hashtag at the end, you can actually click on that hashtag and it'll pull up every tweet, all the most recent tweets that include the same hashtag, right? So if you wanted to use this right, you could really start being consistent with your hashtags. So maybe like having like, 5 to 10 hashtags, and always using those and categorizing the types of posts that you're putting out there. So like maybe you have like resources, or you have like, volunteer, or malama aina, for, which means like taking care of the land in Hawaii. Or you might have like a hashtag made for an event that you're doing. So say like you're doing some kind of farming convention, you might want to say like, tell everybody at the event to whenever they post anything to tag it as like hashtag farming FarmCon 2014 or something like that, And so just so that people can click on that later and look up all the updates that are happening from your event. And Twitter is the one place where you can never post too much. So just like the more the better on Twitter. But kind of like make it focused on real-time events, and that's going to be the way that you get the most value out of Twitter. But you can also just use it as like a mirror for other types of things, or just to do like quick announcements for your, for events and link to sign up pages and stuff like that. All right, so the next platform I want to talk about is Google+. And Google is a huge, huge company, but in terms of its social media, it's kind of like the little brother of Facebook, right? It's always, it started after Facebook. It tries to compete with Facebook, but it's kind of always, at least culturally, just like a step behind. There are fewer users than Facebook, but there's actually a lot more integrated features and a lot of cool stuff on Google+. So there's a lot of really cool tools you can use, but your community might not be there. And that's not to say that they aren't there, but it's kind of developed more of like niche user bases. So if your community is there, then they might be super engaged, but otherwise they might just be, have a few people who use it once in a while. So that's going to really have to be up to you to decide, like, how your community is represented on Google+. But the cool thing about it is that it's integrated with all of the other Google Suite products. So if you have Gmail, then you already have that Google account. And you have access to all of these products like Google Hangouts, which is super cool. It's like it's kind of like Skype, but it has more features, and it's integrated with Google, and it's integrated with Google Chat, and you can use it to collaborate on documents and on all kinds of cool stuff. Like you can collaborate on PowerPoints live with people, and you can actually edit the PowerPoint inside of Hangouts. And by the time you're done with the meeting, the PowerPoint's all edited live. So really cool stuff with Hangouts, and you can actually record those sessions too. Then it's integrated with Gmail. Google Calendar you can use, which is really powerful, but that's also integrated with any events you create through Google+. Google Drive was formerly known as Google Docs, but it's basically like a place where you can create online spreadsheets, Word documents, PowerPoints, forms, all kind of stuff, and you can just create that there. You can collaborate with friends, and you can do that through your network if you want as well. Google also owns YouTube, and we'll be getting into that next. But it also allows for a lot of cool interoperability that really is only possible through the Google Suite. So you can check all those things out later, and they're all free. That's the best part. So I would highly recommend that you use them, and we use them in our office, and we love it, and it saves us a lot of money as well. And the other thing is that creating a business profile on Google+ will dramatically increase or improve your Google ability, right? So like when someone looks up your organization or maybe like related keywords on Google, if you have a Google+ profile set up for your business, you'll have like this little like preview blurb that appears at the top of your search results, but like on the right side and in a box. And you might have seen this before. I should have took a screenshot, but it makes a huge difference. So even if you're not going to use it, I would definitely recommend creating that Google+ profile. And in the Google+ profile, you can also like designate your address, like your physical physical address, and you can put that on Google Maps, and it will become a permanent part of, or not permanent, I guess, but it'll become a default part of Google Maps. So if somebody is in Google Maps and they're just like looking around the area where you are, it'll show your business name on Google Maps. And also, like if you're searching for some type of service that you provide, in the Google results that come out of that search, a lot of times you'll see like a map with little pinpoints on the map showing you like related businesses to that product in your area. You'll be in that map. So do that business profile. And then the other thing that Google Communities has that's really cool is, and that Google Plus has, is Google Communities. And we actually use this in our office. And so in Google Plus, on the left, you'll see a personal profile page. That's my page. But on the right, you'll see a Google Community page. And what's really cool about this is that it allows you to kind of create any type of community-specific page that you want and integrate all of those different Google Suite features that I talked about. And so what you see on the right is the native languages page. Then this is an ANA nationwide page dedicated to any type of organization who's working with native languages. And if you haven't joined yet or checked it out yet, I highly recommend checking it out. You could just go to the Google Plus page and search for native languages and look for this page. And so on the right, you can see like a bunch of links over there, and these are like permanent links that you can keep posted on your community page. So these are links to all of the regional TTA centers, and this is us specific right here. And so that's really useful, something you can't do on Facebook. And then you can categorize all of your conversations by static categories, and your members can also tag their things that way as well. And then and you can also post like photos, links, YouTube videos, create events. It's very useful. And so, as part of the Google Suite, so Google bought YouTube, I forget how long ago, but Google does own YouTube, so it's integrated in everything. And in YouTube, it's all about the videos, and you guys are familiar with YouTube, so this is going to be like your personal video channel. And in YouTube, we're all used to like uploading videos that we create, but you can also do live video streams, and this is actually handled in collaboration with Google Hangouts, which I talked about a little earlier. And so you can have live sessions streaming through YouTube. So for example, if you're having an event, right, you could have that streaming live all day, and then you can actually record that as it streams and then archive it on your YouTube channel. And people can subscribe to your YouTube channel and like get updates whenever you post something new. And it is in and of itself another social network. And related to that, you also want to watch the comments on your videos, like flag things that are inappropriate, but also kind of like, learn from what people are saying. And if you think it's going to be really controversial, and like maybe there's like minors in under 18 individuals in the video, you might want to like just turn comments off if you want. But these videos are highly shareable, and they include links that allow you to embed it in other types of social media like Facebook posts, Google posts, stuff like that. And if you are going to like create videos for the purpose of sharing, try to keep it under 2 minutes or maybe 2:30, something like that. Just because people are going to be watching it on the go, or kind of like watching it while they're looking at a bunch of other stuff. And so you're trying to cater to short attention span, deliver them the goods. But it's also just a good way for you to practice like keeping your message to a short elevator pitch type of format. And related to that, if you do have like federal grants, especially, you want to kind of use captions in your videos. And so YouTube allows you to like create to upload caption transcripts to your videos. And if that video is paid for through a federal grant, you may be required to do to make sure that it's compliant with Section 508 standards on accessible information technologies, which requires you to have captions. And so those features are all built into YouTube. And one thing that you might want to do if you are going to be posting a lot of videos, like if you do have a lot of things that you do that are best suited to video, you might want to create like an intro sequence. So maybe like the first screen has like the name of your organization, and then you have like the title of whatever that video is going to be, right, and maybe some background music or something, and then you fade into the video, and you just keep a standard intro sequence. And so that's a good thing. But what's maybe more important is like a clickable outro sequence. And so this is like after your video is done. If you watch a lot of videos from like really prolific content providers, you'll see that at the end of the video, they have like this screen that they leave up there for maybe like 5 seconds. And on that screen, it has little thumbnails that are clickable, like little previews of other videos, and you can click that to go to the next video that those guys uploaded and watch that. And so this is a way that you can like keep people in your channel and keep them engaged and bouncing around to other related videos. And so you know, by creating one of these outro pages, you know, you can really like keep people engaged in the long term. And you know, just like some of us do with Netflix and Hulu, when you find like a show that you really love, you just end up binge watching it and going down the rabbit hole sometimes. So you know, it's a good thing if other people are doing it for our stuff, especially if our videos are inspiring them or something like that. Okay, so I want to get through these other ones really quickly. So the next one I'm going to talk about is Pinterest, which is a newer platform, but it's really all about photos, right? And this is really good for visual products. So if you have, you know, if you have fashion or food, or if you want to use like a lot of infographics or like beautiful photos of landscapes and stuff like that, these are highly shareable on Pinterest. And the way that it works is like, you know, people look through like this big board of photos that they can keep looking down, and when you click on one, it opens up and you can click on a link there to go to the website where that photo is from. And so it's not just about like sharing photos as art, but it's also just showing like photos as a portal to content. And so for example, like my fiance and I, we look for recipes on Pinterest a lot. And so like if we see a photo of a dish that looks good, we'll click on it and expect to find a recipe to cook it. So that's a lot of times how we plan our dinners. So what you see here is like a photo that would appear on a website. And so if your website is Pinterest enabled, and you might need to have like a web dude help you with this, but if your website is Pinterest enabled, if you hover over a photo, then this red pin it button over here pops up, right? And if you click on that, it'll be added to your Pinterest account. And when you're adding it, you can choose to put it onto a board, right? And so boards are places where you can pin photos and categorize them based on a certain type of category. So you definitely want to like mind your boards. So, you know, create categories that make sense for your organization and post things to those categories. And also you want to watch how your users repost your pins. So if they're pinning them to boards that have a different category than maybe you had it categorized under, then it might be interesting to see how people are understanding the content that you're providing to them. Because a lot of times, like in their minds, they categorize it in a different way than you intended maybe. And watching how they categorize that information can really give you some insight as to how people are perceiving your company or your services or your projects or whatever. And so on this page, you can see on the left there, this is a board. This is a board about infographics that my fiance has. And so she saves all of these different types of infographic images that give information about things, right? And then this is her personal page here, and you can see like all these different boards that she has as categories where she keeps things. And another thing is that Pinterest is the only platform that's like primarily used by women. Not to say that men don't use it. A lot of men do use it, but it just happens to be like something that's primarily used by women. So that just quickly, like there are a bunch of other social networks out there. LinkedIn is good if you have, you know, if you're primarily like a business to business type of organization, or you mostly work with other businesses or small businesses or large businesses or whatever, or a lot of professional type of stuff. And besides like the resume kind of things that most of us are familiar with, there are other types of social media news feed type of features in LinkedIn that you might want to check out. Wikipedia, I don't know if you would really call that social media, but you definitely want to keep your entries accurate because other people can change it, and it's social in terms of how it's edited. I put Spotify on here just because it's an example of like a micro niche network. So Spotify is like a place where like you can share music with other people and you can just play music. But it is an example of like a tight niche. So if you had to deal with a lot of music, or if your organization like features musicians, for example, you might want to use Spotify and go to a place where music lovers are. But those are really niche places. So look for other things like that. And then Reddit is an example of like a forum. And so Reddit is probably like the largest, most comprehensive forum. So any type of category of discussion you can think of is probably on Reddit already. But yeah, there's lots of different forums, and sometimes they're just like a part of other websites. But it depends on how active people are. But if people are active in your forum, you want to be a part of those conversations. So I'm running a little bit behind. So in this next section, carrying out a social media plan, I'll go through this a little more quickly. And if you have any questions after this, you could always email me or watch the recording again. But I'll definitely help you if you need help after this. So like I said, your social media plan is going to be a unique portfolio of social media platforms that's really specific to your organization, right? And so it's not just like there is no best type of social media. There is no best way to do it. It's really just depending on what you need. So the first thing you need to do is do an analysis of what you need, right? So first of all, find out where your community is already before you start trying to like cultivate a community from scratch, because chances are a lot of them are already engaging with each other, whether they know it or not, in one of these networks, right? So at least start there, because you'll get some momentum, and it will help you to kind of prioritize one over the other. And then next, you want to inventory and assess your current social media profiles. So like those social media accounts that you started a long time ago and forgot about, look them up and figure out what you did right, what you did wrong, how many followers you have already, stuff like that. And then really talk about, and this might be an internal conversation, but about how many hours per week can you actually commit to this, and for how long can you continue to do it. And so ideally that you want to commit, but really try and be realistic and think about, like, and how long will I need to assess this. And a good, like if you can commit like an hour a day to social media, then you'll get a lot of payout from that. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is map out a tactical work plan. And if you guys have applied for an AMA grant before, this is really a lot like an OWP. So one thing you might want to think about is the 10-4-1 rule. And this is kind of like a general rule of thumb for social media people. So basically the 10-4-1 rule means, so for every 15 posts or tweets or pins or whatever, you want to post 10 that are from other trusted sources or partners. So that might mean like sharing an article you read in the New York Times, or a podcast that you heard that's related to what your people do. Or maybe you want to like highlight the efforts of partner organizations that you work with, which will not only like add value to your followers, what your followers want, but also like strengthen your partnership with those people. You want to try and do like 10 of those. Then you want to do 4 that's from original content. And basically that's going to be like, you blog about something, and then you share that blog entry to your social media. And doing that allows you to like, archive the thing that you're sharing, but it also allows you to like, type as much as you want, right? So like 1,000 words or whatever, which is something that you could never convey through any of the social media platforms that I went over. And then out of those 15 posts, only one of them should be promotional or like an advertisement, right? And so if you start going more than one per 15, then you're going to start becoming like that overly aggressive salesman who can't turn off sales mode when he's in a regular party, right? So that's the sweet spot, 1 per 15. And like I said, with Twitter, you can kind of just post as much as you want, but you still don't want to be flooding people with promotional stuff or ads because they will defriend you or start ignoring you. Then list activities with deadlines and who's responsible for each, just like an OWP. And then set goals and milestones, and figure out how you're going to be measuring these things. So like number of followers, partners, depth of conversation, number of people who join us, certain groups, certain number of people from certain geographic areas. However you want to measure it, just like define those metrics up front so that you can track the progress throughout the first year or first 6 months or however you want to do it. Then once you're done with that, the next thing is to lay it all out on an editorial calendar and share that with the team, right? And this will allow you to just have like a big at-a-glance type of thing. And you might want to consider a drip strategy. And a drip strategy is like, basically you have like pre-planned posts, right? So like, say that I have a big event that's coming up in September. So it's June now, so I know that like I need everyone to be registered by end of August. And so I know that throughout the month of August there's going to be a big push for registration. But in July maybe I'll start pushing for registration, but not as much, and then in June it'll be mostly just about like announcing the event and talking about all the cool things that are going to be a part of it. And then in August or maybe in September I might want to like post more details about the upcoming event, like where to park, stuff like that. And then when it's actually event time, then I'll be posting like photos from the event or like schedule changes and stuff like that. So a drip strategy is like planning ahead, and there are actually platforms that you can use to like pre-schedule all of those posts, and it'll just all post it for you. And then you also want to cycle through the staff members who write your blogs, and you might even want to like feature guest bloggers, right? Why not like highlight the expertise of your partners? And cycling through writers not only like helps to not burn someone out, but it also helps to feature the individual expertise of different people on your staff, which is always nice. And then the next step is to commit. So a lot of times people will like start these profiles and use them for like the first month or two, but then they'll kind of just like trail off and forget about them, right? So if you're going to start it, just like think of the time it needs and try to commit. And consider using third-party dashboard tools like Hootsuite and TweetDeck, because these are things that will help with drip strategies like I talked about, and where you can kind of like post one thing and it goes out to all of your social media platforms at once. Or you could have like Facebook posts automatically summarized to Twitter or vice versa. And you also want to like regularly assess the social media landscape. So this is technology and it's changing all the time, right? And so, there could be tomorrow a new social network could launch that I didn't talk about that just like overtakes all of the ones that I talked about. And so you want to like be up on that and move with your communities, right? So if they're all going somewhere, like by all means go with them or lead them to that other place if you can, So just to recap, when you're creating a social media plan, the first thing you want to do is assess everything, right? Ask yourself, what are we doing well? Where are we falling short? Assess everything, and also, find out where are we right now with social media? The next thing you want to do is define goals. Where do we want to be in 6 months or 1 year? It's hard to think beyond 1 year with social media, really. So, if you want to go to 2 years, that's fine. But 6 months to a year is where you want to be with defining goals. And then you want to define your metrics. How will we track success? Assess your communities. Where are they? Where is everyone? And only after doing all of those things can you actually then start choosing the platforms you want to use, right? So it's not, don't think to yourself like, oh, we need a Twitter account because these guys have one. Like that's, what you really need is a social media strategy. And after you kind of have that portfolio defined, then you want to assess your internal capacity, make sure that you make realistic commitments, and then assess the competition. And for us, for a lot of our community organizations, we're not really like competing with people like in the business marketplace, but in social media, we're really competing for people's attention, right? And so if you see people are doing some cool thing, like by all means steal their tricks. Nothing is proprietary for how you reach out to people. So if you see something that really works for someone else and you think you could use it, then try it out, because if you're posting regularly, you can always adjust your strategy on the fly. And what you want to do is really use your unique voice. So if you have one consistent voice that you write with, whether it's like funny or it's serious or inspirational or academic or witty or however you want to do it, just sticking with a consistent voice helps people to kind of like start to palette your outreach and maybe like kind of like start hooking on to the way that you do things and really understanding like the way you are, your ano. And so, yeah, we kind of went through that quickly, and we have a few minutes left, so I'll try and take a couple of questions now if any of you have any. You can either type your question into the chat box, or you can click on the talk button and speak through your computer's microphone. But if you have a question, I would appreciate it if you could click on the raise hand button, and I'll call on you in the order that the questions are received. Okay, so we have a question from Malia, and she's asking, what do you mean by assess where your community is at? Okay, good question. Okay, so what you want to, I think like a good way to start assessing where your community is by creating a personal profile for yourself, and then just starting to like browse through all of these different social media platforms. So a lot of times, like, we meet people in our communities through our projects and through our organizations. And so like I might create a, my own unique Facebook page for Matthew Kaʻānaniʻau, profile. And then I'll like find some of the people who I met through projects who, maybe I'm kind of friends with them too. And then you can kind of see like what kind of conversations those guys are having, who their friends are, what kind of groups that they might be in, and look at all those things and kind of like start to assess where your community currently is. And so, you could say like, most of my community is on Facebook, most of it's at Twitter, but you might also want to go deeper than that and say like, within Facebook, I see that a lot of my friends are a part of the Hawaiian Journalists Association group, or maybe they're like from friends of this something group, right? So do that. And then Kukahakalau is asking about how do you feel about Facebook groups? And I like Facebook groups. So Facebook groups allows you to make a group within Facebook where individual people with profiles can join this group based on interests or based on work groups, based on whatever kind of category they want. And you can set those groups to be either public or private or secret. And the groups are cool because you can post like resources to them. So you can post PDFs that people can download. You can pin posts so that they permanently stay featured and all kinds of stuff. You can invite new people. You can create events, that kind of stuff. And I know Kukahakalau has a Facebook group called Hoa Aloha Olelo maybe, but it's like a really good language group. So that's a good example of somebody who created a group that's useful to the community that uses it. And so hers is really active. Every day you see people like practicing their Hawaiian language on there, and so I think that's just like a really awesome way to do it. Yeah, Hoa Olelo Hawaii. Excuse me. So check that out on Facebook. That's actually a good example of a group. But that doesn't work for everyone. But it has worked for her. So Hoku is asking, is it possible to video chat with multiple people on Google Hangouts? And yeah, it is. And that's like one of the really cool things about it. And Malia was saying that she likes it better than Skype. Yeah, up to 10. I think that is true. Yeah, and you can also like while you're in a hangout with those multiple people, yeah, you can do stuff like share screen. You can collaborate on documents. You can do silly stuff like put an eye patch on their face or something. And you can also like record those Hangouts, and you can archive them in your YouTube channel for later. So yeah, I highly recommend it. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, Google. So Hoku is saying Google is really full function. Yeah, and yeah, it is. It's really good. It's just that you know, the user base is not organically there. So in my experience, when we've tried to work with Google Plus, a lot of it has been like first like teaching people how to set up their Google account, and then starting to like pull them into being engaged. But there are lots of real communities who are already actively engaged and organically conversing in Google Plus. So it really just depends on where you're at. Yeah, but a lot of people like have migrated from Facebook to Google Plus and still use it there. And a lot of people have found Google Plus through their Gmail accounts, which is integrated. So yeah, it's cool. And I forgot to say that like the likes, like Facebook likes on Google Plus are called +1s. So if you see something and you like it, you click on the +1 button and you give it a +1. It's like kudos. Okay, so are there any more questions? All right, I guess there are no more questions. So let me just recap as we close the webinar. So today's goals were to provide you with an overview of popular social networks and provide some best practices, and then also to guide you to creating your own social media strategic plan. And I went over both of these pretty fast, so you'll be able to review this webinar next week. Probably at the end of next week, it'll be posted to the resources section of the ANA website. But if you have any questions in between, just shoot me an email. I'll keep my contact information on the last screen, and I'll be glad to help you with however I can, or call our office or whatever, and I'll help you out individually. And so a couple more resources if you want to check stuff out on your own. So every website has like a help section, right? Each of these social media platforms. And so what you want to look for is the documentation for content creators. And YouTube has like a really awesome section for content creators. It teaches you how to use like their built-in video editor. It teaches you how to upload captions. It teaches you how to create that that outro screen that I talked about. So yeah, look for that kind of stuff. Then you might also want to look at like tech industry news sites if you want to kind of find out about what's going on in social media, because the worst thing is to like create this whole campaign strategy for a social media platform that is going to just like shut down in a week or something, And a place that I really recommend is mashable.com, which is like one of the main tech industry websites. And they have a whole section on social media, which is just focused on that. And it has like a lot of how-to stuff. So check that out if you can. Otherwise, just like do a Google or a YouTube search for how to do whatever you're trying to do in social media. And this seems kind of like facetious for me to say that, but part of the reason why you want to do that is because it also gives you the experience of what your users will be going through, right? So, you get like the user side experience of how to do those things and maybe be inspired for how you can contribute to those answers that your users might be looking for or your communities might be looking for. And then I'll try and like email you guys a guide tomorrow. And that's going to go out to everybody who's registered through the registration form. So if you access this webinar without registering, then just go back to the registration form and throw your email in there sometime today, and I'll send that out to you tomorrow. And for people who are watching this webinar via the YouTube archive, you can look down in the description for a link to download that resource. And so just to recap some of our upcoming webinars. Next week, Thursday, we have one webinar on Two-Spirit LGBT projects in Native communities, and another on how to apply for NABI grants, which is currently in the application process. And then on June 26th, we have a webinar on finding census information in your community. And you can sign up for all of those via the events page of the ANA website. So thank you all for joining us today. That was pretty fast, but if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. My name is Matt, and my email is there, matt@kaʻānaniʻau.com. The name of our company is Kaʻānaniʻau, and we operate the Pacific Region Training and Technical Assistance Center for the Administration for Native Americans. And our office phone number is also on the screen there, so if you want to, if you'd rather talk over the phone, that's fine. And I'd be happy to help you with anything social media related or beyond. So please don't hesitate to do that. And after this webinar, I'll be emailing out a survey asking you how we did, and it'd be really helpful if you could fill that out. And there's also a place where you can suggest topics for future webinars. And we're actually planning the next 6 months of our webinar schedule this month. So if there are things that you really would want to see a webinar on, then place them in the box at the bottom of that evaluation form, and we definitely will consider it. And more than likely, because we have one a week, more than likely your suggestion will become a real webinar. So please take advantage of that. So thank you again for your participation, and aloha.